Hello, and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll hear from the 2016 North Dakota Poetry Out Loud High School champion. But first, joining me now is Lieutenant Dan Haugen from the North Dakota Highway Patrol. Lieutenant, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Well, as we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're originally from.
I'm originally from Langdon, North Dakota, where I was raised by two school teachers. And I graduated from high school and joined the United States Marine Corps. It seemed like a good adventure, good way to mature myself. I spent 3 years in California and a year in Okinawa, Japan. And when I got out of the Marines, I went to college at Bismarck State College.
Okay, and then what got you into law enforcement?
Well, I think as a kid, I remember seeing police officers in the town of Langdon, and as a kid, they get to carry a gun and they get to drive fast, so that seemed interesting. And then as I matured throughout the years and in the Marines, I was actually a military policeman, and I fell in love with the job. The differences every day, there's no boredom. You see different roads, different highways every day, and you meet different people every day, and it's something that I wanted to make a career out of.
Okay. With that said, how long have you been highway patrolman?
I've been a trooper for 16 years.
16 years. Let's talk about the Law Enforcement Training Academy. Where is it, and tell me about it.
The Law Enforcement Training Academy is up on Schaefer Street next to Bismarck State College. We've been there since, I believe, 1970.
Okay, and what all happens there?
We provide basic and advanced law enforcement training to the peace officers in North Dakota. The basic training is from start to finish to get them certified as a police officer. And then we also bring in advanced training such as advanced crash reconstruction, drug recognition training, advanced roadside impairment detection training, and so forth.
Well, how many new recruits are allowed each year, or is there a limitation?
There is no limit. We'll change to any number of recruits we get. On average, though, we graduate 90 basic recruits each year.
So you graduate 90, but then what steps do they go through to even get trained?
In order, I receive a lot of emails on this, and we don't have an open door policy, so to say. In order to come to the academy, you have to first apply and get hired by a peace officer agency, whether it's a city, county, or state agency. Then after a background check, a psychological check, and a medical physical, once they hire you, they send you to me to get trained. And once they leave the academy, then they're fully licensed.
So obviously you said they're hired. Are they on the job for any period of time before they come to the academy?
Under the North Dakota Peace Officers Standards and Training Board, the governing board for peace officers in the state, they can receive a limited license for up to a year, meaning they could go work the road under direct supervision for up to a year. But there's a lot of agencies in the state, like the Highway Patrol and Fargo Police Department, that don't allow that. And for example, a Highway Patrol recruit will not work the road until they graduate the full academy.
Okay. But then how many pass? You mentioned 90 a year, I think, but percentage-wise, how many pass and how many don't?
Yeah, well, they all pass because I'm training them, right?
Okay.
Like I said, they're pretty well vetted through all the background checks and everything. If I have a student that has trouble in any of the disciplines of the training curriculum, then we'll provide them remedial training. The taxpayers of North Dakota pay me to give the best training I can to these officers, and we'll spend countless hours with them so that when they graduate, which they do, they're the best they can be.
Well, how long does the training last? And then, of course, are there classes, or what kind of obstacles do the recruits go through?
Okay. We have a curriculum, and it consists of 12 weeks of training that is 80 classes long, and they must pass all 80 classes in order to receive their certificate.
Okay. 12 weeks sounds like Marine Corps boot camp to
It
me.
does, yeah.
Are mistakes sometimes made? I mean, in other words, can some people get through, and I've used the term bad apples, and make it through the training who turn out not to be the kinds of officers maybe an organization wants?
In North Dakota, I don't really see bad apples coming to the training academy because of the extensive background investigations and everything. But that's not to say that they don't turn into bad apples once they leave my academy. We are humans, and we're part of the human race, and humans make mistakes.
Okay. What kind of different branches can recruits train for? I mean, you mentioned, is it where they're hired, or for you're making a career, I guess, on highway patrol, but highway patrol, city police work, sheriff's work?
Yep. We'll take any government peace officer agency, their employees, and train them, which lately has been police officers, sheriff's deputies, parole and probation officers, highway patrol recruits, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, in North Dakota in general, and maybe it's a general statement I'm thinking of, we don't seem to see as many high-profile sort of incidents involving law enforcement like we do sort of in bigger cities or maybe more populated states.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, one could think that the Norwegians and the German Russians are finally getting along, but in actuality, it's the good West morals that we were raised to have up here and the low population density. If you think of New York City with 8 million people, New York City is roughly 450 square miles, excuse me. Well, that's 1/3 of Cass County. Can you imagine 8 million people living in 1/3 of Cass County? And so that's why you see them having a higher crime rate than North Dakota. And with the less crime rate, you see less law enforcement incidences.
Sure. Well, then, in terms of training new officers, you must go through training as well, at least I'm going to assume, so that you know how to train them effectively. Can you tell us about that?
Yep. We, all the instructors that teach at the Law Enforcement Training Academy have to attend a 1-week Methods of Instruction school. And it's a post-board certified course that prepares a person to become an instructor. Not only that, but the instructors that I bring into the academy, I consider subject matter experts. Out of those 80 courses, some of them shouldn't be taught by me. Like criminal law, I bring in attorneys. Civil law, I bring in attorneys. They know a lot more about the subject than I do. Traffic law, we have troopers teaching it, because if troopers know anything, it's traffic law.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that said, how many staff work at the academy? I mean, yourself, how many more? But then, you're bringing in, I'll call them consultants or others to teach classes. What's the makeup there?
Yeah, there's myself, the director, and then I have 2 training sergeants, and I have a civilian staff to support the facility. So with 2 training sergeants and myself, we rely heavily on volunteer instructors from other agencies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's turn, I guess, to the death of Officer Mosier. Of course, was a big story in Fargo and the surrounding area. Can you explain to viewers how his death and how that's impacted law enforcement in the state?
Yep. Officer Mosier's death was heart-wrenching for us. In North Dakota, law enforcement is an extremely tight-knit community. And it's because we understand each other. We all have the same bad lower backs, the same poor eating habits, the poor sleeping habits, and we can understand the ups and downs of the job with each other. And after he passed away, it was a hard reminder of the dangers that we face every day. Even though North Dakota is one of the safest states to live in, there's still dangers out there for us. And we can't allow ourselves to get complacent, and we have to stay at the top of our game every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know Fargo feels that they need more officers because of the growth of the city. Can you talk about that some?
I can't talk specifically about Fargo, but a community in general that feels the need. For example, Bismarck has been growing quite a bit. When a department has a lack of officers, what can happen is the current officers are running around from calls to calls to calls, and they're not getting time to do their paperwork, just to even catch their breath. and that can cause them to be overwhelmed and stressed, and will ultimately cause burnout. And with burnout, you can have officers quitting and finding other employment. So the goal of a city or county or state is to have enough officers to safely do the job, keeping in mind budgets, and to prevent burnout.
Yeah, with that said, I assume, of course, your department or the academy is not in charge of recruitment for anybody. So it's up to the city or sheriff's department or whoever for recruitment of officers.
That's correct. All we do is, I shouldn't say all we do a lot, but we train employees that are sent to us by local government.
Okay. Well, turn a little bit to law enforcement in the oil country. I know a couple of years ago it was a big issue. They were talking about trying to get more and more officers out there with not enough presence at the time. Is that settled down now, or what's going on in that part of the state?
It has settled down. What we saw a few years ago at the height of the boom was officers responding from call to call to call, and they weren't able to be proactive. And you have to be proactive out on the highways, for example, to be a deterrent and to keep the highways safe. Now the officers aren't responding to countless calls and are able to be proactive. There are vacancies in the state. I just looked it up today. Statewide, there's 25 agencies that are hiring in North Dakota right now. And some of that is due to retirement, and some of that is during the height of the boom. A lot of Minnesotans came over for employment. And now that they have their work experience, they're able to get jobs back home in Minnesota. And so they're creating some vacancies also.
Okay. Can you talk about the dangers of pulling over a motorist? I mean, most of us, if we get pulled over, it's an aggravation of a mistake we probably made. But for you, you're walking up to someone who you don't have a clue or a very good clue as to what you may be coming upon.
Right. Traffic stops and domestics are two of the scariest incidences for law enforcement to respond. Traffic stops, you're walking up to a car for whatever violation that you saw, and you don't know what that driver has gone through that day. You don't know if they're having the worst day of their life or the best day of their life. And so it's so hit and miss that you have to be extremely cautious while walking up to the vehicle, making sure that you keep their hands in sight at all times, and you go through the motions of the traffic stop and investigate it.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit about drivers even slowing down and being cautious when they see an officer has somebody pulled over to the side of the road?
Yeah, North Dakota has a move-over law, and in North Dakota, the law says that if you see flashing lights ahead, to move over to the other lane and slow down. And in North Dakota, on a two-lane road, we don't ask that you change lanes if there's other vehicles coming at you, but to at least slow down for us. An example would be if someone drove 75 miles an hour 6 feet away from your desk, you'd probably call 911. Well, no one likes to be standing on the side of the highway 6 feet away from a vehicle going 75 miles an hour. So it's for the officer's safety, it's for the driver's safety. At those speeds, it's just too dangerous to not scoot over.
You mentioned a little bit about how you got into law enforcement, and you've obviously 16 years or so. So, can you talk a little bit more about, the why and why you've stayed in law enforcement?
I stayed in law enforcement, I think, because I enjoyed the challenge of the job and the freedom. Being a trooper provides you a lot of freedom. Like I said earlier, you meet different people every day, you can see different scenery every day. And then as you go through the ranks in the Highway Patrol, you get more responsibilities, and I just really enjoy the challenges. And I currently enjoy the challenge of teaching young people how to become police officers.
You mentioned the 80 classes, I think you mentioned, but is there a physical part to the academy also?
Right. We actually run 3 classes a year, totaling around 90 people. Mm-hmm. And out of the 80 classes in those 3 academies, there is physical fitness. They actually have physical fitness at 5:30 in the morning, 3 days a week.
Okay. And are they required then to live at the academy during that week?
No, a Highway Patrol recruit is required to live at the academy, but other agencies, they can stay at our academy for free, and we'll provide them meals, but local agencies don't have to stay at the academy.
Okay. How many Highway Patrol officers are there in the state?
Right now, we're authorized up to 172 troopers spread throughout the state.
So 172, is the state divided up into regions, districts?
Yep, we have essentially 5 regions. We have 4 geographical regions, northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast, and then we have a motor carrier division, which their emphasis is on truck enforcement.
Mm-hmm. What do you consider sort of the best part of your job?
The freedom. Just every day is different. There's no monotony, no boredom. It's just different every day.
Well, with that said, because, I want to back up a little bit to when you pull over a motorist, as a person who might get pulled over, what would you give them advice on what to do and how to treat an officer as they're coming up on a call?
Mm-hmm. I guess even if you've had a bad day, just take a deep breath and pull over to the right. And the officer is probably running your license plate, so there may be a couple minutes. Just go ahead and get your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance out, and just hear what the person has to say. A lot of times an officer is going to tell you that you may have a brake light out, and you didn't know that. So just sit and listen to what they have to say, and we'll go through the motions.
Yeah. Well, if people want to get more information about law enforcement training, what's the best place, where's the best place for them to go?
There's a lot of law enforcement training information out on the internet, but they can visit us, the Highway Patrol website at nd.gov/NDHP, and on our website they can click on the Training Academy and see what courses we have coming up.
When I think about it, you talked about your career and your background, but if there's a young high school student, a college student out there that's thinking about law enforcement, what advice would you give them?
My advice is to go to college. I have kids growing up, and that's the advice I'm going to give my own children. Go to college and apply for different police officer jobs that you may want to go into, and they'll send you to the academy, but definitely go to college.
Okay. Well, Lieutenant Dan Haugen, we thank you for joining us today and wish you the best of luck in your career.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Stay tuned for more. Poetry Out Loud is a contest and allows high school students to learn about their literary heritage, master public speaking skills, and build self-confidence. Caroline Huber of Minot is North Dakota's 2016 Poetry Out Loud champion.
Half of my life is gone, and I have let the years slip from me and have not fulfilled the aspiration of my youth. I love poetry. I like learning, especially history. Everyone in my family is giant history nerds. I really love drawing. I like painting and using charcoal. I'm an artsy-fartsy person on the inside. When I'm planning an art piece, I try to put a bunch of meaning into it. I'm coming up with a poem in my head and then trying to make that visual and put that on a canvas or a piece of paper. Poetry Out Loud is a competition where kids in high school are given the opportunity to recite poetry. I'm in an AP language arts class, and my teacher was really gung-ho about Poetry Out Loud. She made it an assignment in her class to pick a poem, and once we were all done, she just said, "Hey, how about you guys go to the school competition too?" And then it just kind of grew from there, and eventually I ended up at state. There are a couple criteria in the poems. You need to have, for state, 3 poems. One is around 25 lines or less, and one has to be written before the 20th century. You pick the poems by going on the Poetry Out Loud website. They have a bunch of poems. You just pick whichever ones speak to you. The judges have a number of different things they're looking for when they're scoring you. They have to look, first off, that you've actually memorized the poem and your accuracy. They look at your posture and body language and the dramatic appropriateness, how much feeling you put into the poem, and then showing that you understand the poem and then help the audience understand the poem. Don't take it personal, they said. But I did. I took it all quite personal. The breeze and the river and the color of the fields, the price of grapefruit and stamps, the wet hair of women in the rain. And I cursed what hurt me, and I praised what gave me joy, the most simple-minded of possible responses. I wasn't nervous initially, but as I would see the line go down and it get closer to me and closer to my time to go, started to freak out. But once I'm actually up there, ready to go, I'm not really nervous. It's all basically muscle memory.
And now the champion for the North Dakota Poetry Out Loud 2016 competition, Carolyn Cougar.
I remember reading a book in 2nd grade about this 5th grader who was a published poet, and I thought that was fascinating. That's what I wanted to do. I used to write little tiny poems, and they weren't exactly great, but I just like how you can manipulate words to describe something that's so hard to actually tell other people. Now I have more of a respect for how poetry changes when it's on the page versus how you say it, because I would read these poems and have a clear idea, this is definitely what this poem means. And then when I would go to say it, it would just have a life of its own, and I would discover a whole new meaning to it that was better than what I got from just reading it out loud. You knew I was coming for you, little one, when the kettle jumped into the fire. Towels flapped on the hooks, and the dog crept off, groaning, to the deepest part of the woods. In the hackles of dry brush, a thin laughter started up. Mother scolded the food warm and smooth in the pot and called you to eat. I think a lot of people would hear about Poetry Out Loud and decide that's not for them, that's too much work, it's not something they really want to try, but I think everyone should at least try it once, at least the school competition, because it's more fun than you would think. You get to meet a bunch of people and just learn so much about poetry and examine your feelings, which are always complicated in high school, and it's just like any other story. And it's also really good for making you get out of your comfort zone and learn how to be a better speaker. I feel like it could help people become more comfortable in public speaking. I'm graduating and I'm going to be going to the Naval Academy. I'm much more comfortable speaking in front of people now because of this, so I feel like it can help me in my future in more ways than people would think, especially considering it's the military and you wouldn't associate that with poetry normally. My second poem was Mezzo Common by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. That poem is kind of about realizing you're halfway through with your life and you've done nothing you wanted to. It was kind of a little weird for an 18-year-old to pick, but even at this age, I'm done with a lot of things. I'm about to be moving on, becoming an adult, and you just stop every now and then and realize you don't really have all that much time left. Mezzo Common by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Half of my life is gone, and I have let the years slip from me and have not fulfilled the aspiration of my youth, to build some tower of song with lofty parapet, not indolence nor pleasure, nor the fret of restless passions that would not be stilled, but sorrow and a care that almost killed kept me from what I may accomplish yet. Though halfway up the hill, I see the past, lying beneath me with its sounds and sights, a city in the twilight, dim and vast with smoking roofs, soft bells, and gleaming lights. And here, above me, on the autumnal blast, the cataract of death, far thundering from the heights.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week. And as always, thanks for watching.
Funding provided by the North Dakota Council on the Arts and by the members of Prairie Public.